destiny of this country in the years to come.
Will you know come back again?
But the country that said farewell in 1954 would never welcome her so unanimously again.
Surely they will come again. After such a summer, after this, how could it be otherwise?
9 years later, Elizabeth did come back again, but to a very different country.
February the 18th, 1963. The Queen returns to Australia.
TV now delivered the royals into the family home. No need to stand for hours in the heat for a quick glimpse. Besides, the euphoria had gone, and the deference too. And when the ageing Robert Menzies welcomed the Queen to Parliament House, the phrase he used made younger Australians cringe.
In the words of the old 17th century poet, I did but see her passing by, and yet I love her till I die.
It really made us sick.
Yeah, fawning,
Physically sick.
obsequious and unbecoming.
Well, some people thought that was a little bit over the top. It wasn't just being sick, they were fairly angry.
So he just took the piss out of it unmercifully.
We were angry young men.
It was an entirely appropriate quote for the occasion.
Had Sir Robert Menzies made his famous quote on the occasion of the first visit by the Queen, I don't think anybody at all would have felt it was over the top.
As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a real beat-up.
One has to say about Sir Robert Menzies that he very rarely misjudged his audience. And if he did so on this occasion, it was perhaps only because he was making the allusion a few years too late.
Amen.
Hello, Australia.
But it wasn't just Menzies who was the butt of satire.
Your wonderful old Prime Minister, Sir Robert Menzies.
On the brash new Mavis Bramston show, the royals copped it too.
How the wit of the Duke of Edinburgh makes me fall about. Did you hear him say the other day, pull your flipping finger out?
The times were changing. Britain was sending younger, more exciting ambassadors. And Australia had more powerful friends, going all the way with LBJ. For the first time, it was conscripting its young men to fight in a war in which Great Britain was not involved. For almost 20 years, Australia had been welcoming migrants who had no ties to Britain.
I put it to Mrs. Franca Arena that the Queen was the Queen of Australia as well as Britain.
Well, I think that to us, migrant, we don't feel that. We feel that she's not an Australian, and this is our new country, and with all due respect, we don't feel she's the Queen of Australia.
The 60s changed Britain too. Skirts were shorter, hair was longer.
On Thursday, the Queen left for Australia, a land famous, like Prince Philip, for its plain speaking.
For brash young satirists in Britain, as in Australia, the royals were fair game.
The royal barge is, as it were, sinking.
Britain suddenly stood up to the monarchy and laughed at it.
And now the Queen, smiling radiantly, is swimming for her life.
And the clever thing was that the Queen didn't fight back. She rode the storm. Elizabeth II's rather brilliant response to the satire and undermining of the 1960s was to make herself a celebrity.
In Australia, as in Britain, the palace had to learn the new art of media management.
Queen in delightful shade of aquamarine, looking so fresh and charming.
There was a set of press advisors that came in and said to the Queen, you know, you're too remote. You've got to make yourself more accessible. And suddenly, they were fair game. And they became like any other celebrity.
The royal party goes for a stroll through the city. And here is informality at its best.
On its 1970 tour, the royal family sallied into the streets of Melbourne to meet ordinary Australians face to face. The walkabout was a minor revolution. It was the brainchild of the Queen's canny Australian courtier, William Heseltine.
People found this a very novel idea to have the Queen walk and say the English equivalent of "How you going, mate?" And it was such a success it was impossible to do any visit thereafter without incorporating the walkabout.
Time for freedom, time for moving. 2 years later, Australia went through a far more profound revolution. After 23 years of Conservative rule, Gough Whitlam led the Labor Party to power in Canberra. Whitlam was in a hurry to change everything, including Australia's relationship with its monarch.
The Prime Minister of Australia, Your Majesty.
How did it go this morning? Was it all right?
Soon after his election, he made the long journey to Britain to meet the Queen at Windsor Castle.
Well, certainly very interesting.
From now on, he advised her, her title while in Australia would change. No more Queen of the United Kingdom. No more Defender of the Faith. In Australia, Whitlam advised, she would be Elizabeth, by the grace of God, Queen of Australia.
Our actions are in no way anti-British. They're simply pro-Australian.
But just 2 years later, the actions of the Governor-General, the Queen's representative in Canberra, would make his role and hers the subject of a bitter constitutional crisis.
All those for an election, all those who want Mr. Whitlam to get the hell out of Canberra. The motion to the floor was carried.
After ministerial sackings and a shady loans affair rocked the nation, opposition leader Malcolm Fraser convinced his coalition colleagues in the Senate to block the supply of money until Whitlam agreed to call an election. Whitlam refused, but his government could no longer pay its bills.
So then why don't you give in?
I shan't. It's not just my government. It is the future of parliamentary democracy in Australia as we know it.
The Governor-General, Sir John Kerr, had been meticulous and punctilious in keeping the Queen informed of all the developments as the drama developed.
But Kerr warned neither the Queen nor his Prime Minister about how he'd decided to resolve the deadlock.
Never seen you fellas up so early.
On Remembrance Day 1975, Whitlam visited Yarralumla. He thought for consultations. But in the Governor-General's study, in a controversial and unprecedented move, Kerr dismissed the elected Prime Minister and installed the leader of the opposition, Malcolm Fraser, as caretaker Prime Minister. Gough Whitlam condemned Kerr, not the Queen.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen. Because nothing will save the Governor-General.
And in Labor mythology, Kerr, not the Queen, has been the villain ever since.
That was outrageous. An outrage. The Queen herself would never have contemplated such a move.
If Kerr had got in touch with the Queen before doing it, it wouldn't have happened. Her immediate reaction would have been, have you consulted your Prime Minister? Or what is your Prime Minister's advice? I mean, do you doubt that she would have said that?
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Scholes, wrote to the Queen and asked for her intervention. There was no question in our minds that this was not possible. The Constitution itself made it perfectly plain that the decision rested in the hands of the Governor-General, and there was no appeal or no prospect of appeal from him to the Queen. The question in my mind has always been whether it wouldn't have been perhaps more prudent of the Governor-General to consult the Queen in a totally informal way about what he was proposing to do. She, after all, had many more years of experience behind her than he did.
The Queen may have been sidelined by Kerr. Nonetheless, he was her proxy in Australia. The Republican fires were lit.
He destroyed the monarchy in Australia.
In her name was the deed done. It tarnished the constitutional silver. Gough said, maintain the rage. I did.
But the nation as a whole did not. Whitlam lost the ensuing election in a landslide. In 1977, just 2 years later, the Queen returned for her Silver Jubilee Tour, a celebration of her 25 years on the throne.
We began to be deluged with alarmist reports from Australia about dire reactions and of violent protests that might be made when the Queen was there. The Queen had been forewarned that they might be really unpleasant. But I have to say that the reception which the Queen got from the Australian crowds in 1977 was possibly warmer than any that she had had since 1954.
In 1977, we had the Queen on the cover of the Weekly every week for the entire month of January, and we sold over 900,000 copies every week. And you think, I love the Queen, because, I mean, their circulation figures from heaven. But after that, she began to lose her value as a cover girl, and the younger royals came along.
The marriage of Prince Charles to Lady Diana Spencer in 1981 restored to British royalty the glamour and romance and fairy tale fantasy that Elizabeth herself had brought to it a generation earlier.
She was young and attractive, and there was a sense that the loyalty that had been traditionally given to the Queen could now be transferred to the next generation. After all, Diana Spencer was going to be the next Queen of Australia.
Australia, like Britain, went Di crazy.
I took that outside St Andrew's Cathedral, and as she came out, I took her hand and I kissed it. And she looked into my eyes, I looked into hers, and I sort of became rather enchanted by her.
Diana maintained the tradition of the young Princess Elizabeth, touching the hearts of her people, doing the job of the modern royal woman. With a gloss, with Bruce Oldfield clothes, with headphones on and bopping, and clearly being totally unsuited for stuffy old Charles.
And for